Hey everyone, I'm 17-year-old writer Noah Barfield, author of that absolutely amazing action fantasy novel Legendland, and today is the Halloween special for Writer's Corner. Now, I am in costume in the spirit of Halloween, and I am Eggs from Box Trolls. If you've never seen that, Eggs has a wonderfully messy, delightful rat's nest of hair, which, for me, is difficult to accomplish, so I won't be flopping around a ton, or else my hair will just lay down like a docile little animal. Now, in the spirit of Halloween, I have decided to talk about what makes a story scary, as well as maybe some hybrids of book that I think would make, or hybrids between writing and other stuff that I think would make an interesting story. Okay, so what makes a story scary? I have no idea. Honestly, I don't. I've been trying to research this thing for years, and I have come up with absolutely nothing. I mean, the difference between a horror book and movie is you don't have, like, jump startling effects whenever you're reading a horror book. You just don't. And also, with a horror movie, you have the soundtrack, which is incredibly helpful. Like, if you mute a horror movie, it's not really scary anymore. It just isn't. So, that being said, there is no soundtrack to a horror story. Enter hybrid idea. I think it would be incredibly amazing, I've been working on this for a while, to have a story, a horror story, with its own creepy soundtrack. And it would have to be digital because of programming and timing and all of that. And, I mean, obviously some people read faster than others, so you can't time it just like that. And rewinding something like that would just be annoying. But, there would have to be some technical stuff involved. But I think that would be really cool, because then you have the creepy violins or pianos or the sudden striking of instruments whenever it's necessary to get more jump-related effects. I mean, imagine you're lying down in your bed and everything's cozy and you're reading about how this person is creeping up the dark hallway, and you've been led to this incredibly huge feeling of suspense, and then bam, your headphones explode with like sudden cacophony of noise and startling sound. I mean, that's what I would like to do. I think that'd be a really cool thing to happen. But as for just like a regular old horror story, how do you make it scary? Well, you need to build up this feeling of suspense. I mean, obviously, that's like scary 101. So you build up a feeling of suspense, and how you do that is actually entirely up to you. There's no one set way to do it. Commonly, you build up suspense like you build up for a horror movie or story, like you do for the suspense in a final battle in your book or the conclusion. You have a series of events that eventually build up suspicion in the reader's mind that culminate in something that is more startling than what they were expecting. Suspense. You want to keep them on edge. That's the real thing with a horror book, is you want to keep them on edge the entire time. You want to have this general feeling of being unsettled. Because if you don't, then they're not gonna care. Like, oh, you can, just, you don't want to overdo it. You want to keep it more subtle and then overdo it. Because if you're overdoing it right from the beginning, then gory is not scary. It just isn't. I mean, I don't know how many horror movies you all have seen, but the gory ones are never even remotely scary at all. Eventually it gets a bit disgusting. So, same for a book. You don't want to just fill it with, violent deaths that have blood splattering everywhere. Sorry for my squeamish audience. But I mean, that can happen, but you don't want that all the time. And you want to be creative. Nothing is scarier than a creative psychopath. I'm not even kidding. Like, oh no, this person stabs people. Well, you know how serial killers gain notoriety? They kill in a certain way. Oh no, this person stabs people in select patterns and then hangs their bodies up by their ankles, which, by the way, have been peeled. Sorry, Halloween, I'm in a creepy mood. But you want to have a creative, you want to keep pushing the boundaries for how you kill people off. Also, want to give people a false sense of security because you need peaceful moments. Just as, a book can't be like all action, all intensity, all heavy stuff all the time. You can't just continuously break people down and depress them. But so you need lighter moments in your horror story. Give them a false sense of security, like, oh, maybe everything is fine now. Nope, no, it's not. Especially if, well, with a movie, I mean, unless you're watching it from home on a computer or something, then you don't know how much time is left. But with a book, you know exactly the page count that's left. So I personally like to save that false sense of security to the very end. Whenever they think, oh, everything is fine, there are only like 5 pages left. No, everything is not fine. That's what I personally like to do. I also like to make my horror things as realistic as possible. One of the things that I have actually gotten responses on that say that people say scared them more than anything else I've ever written that I have actually showed people was my story Sunny, about a zombie apocalypse. I'm like, it's zombies. That's not really scary at all. But I wrote it in a realistic way, similar to the way H.G. Wells did War of the Worlds, and it got to people because I did it in a specific way where it seemed like it was possible. And I think that is the main key whenever you do a horror story, is make it seem like it could happen to the reader. Don't, even if you're going to write about, like, say your horror story is, about zombies, make it realistic. Like, this could happen to you at any moment. You have to give them that feeling. And if you can't, then they have to have a greater suspension of disbelief. And initially, that's already difficult to do. Like, if someone's going to pick up a book, they have to have some sort of suspension of disbelief unless it's nonfiction. And that means they are willing to suspend their disbelief that, hey, this could happen, because it's a book, so it's a fiction novel. But the more effort you put into your writing and the better the writing is, the more people get sucked into it, and that's why you get sucked into a book, because the better the person's writing is, the more you suspend your disbelief, and you're like, oh, this could actually happen. That's what happens subconsciously. You need to do that to an extreme whenever you write anything horror-related. That way people are like, oh man, this could happen to me. Especially if you're doing something realistic like a serial killer thriller horror thing. Or something like Scream, like the book equivalent of Scream. You want to make sure that you have a great suspension of disbelief. And that means you want to make your characters, as with any novel, you want to make them, or story, you want to make them as realistic as possible. You want to do what you can so that they're relatable. And even the killer, go inside the killer's head. Don't make it completely twisted. Give it some humanity. That way people are like, oh my god, this could be someone I know. And then you have a lot of paranoid people reading your book, but people are reading your book. No, now, I personally don't find things scary whenever I read them. I very rarely find anything scary. Horror. I use air quotes around that because that's not my opinion. Like, I really don't. I think real life is scarier than almost anything media or books or what have you can throw at me. But I do enjoy scaring people. So I do my best to at least make something suspenseful and get someone's heart racing and leave them a little paranoid, wary, looking over their shoulder once I'm finished. And I think that's the goal with any horror writer, at least. But I personally don't find things scary, and I am not sure what exactly makes a scary story. But these are things that I have found across the internet or asking actual people, and things that I have experienced myself whenever I would read things whenever I was younger, or that people have told me are actually helpful, or actually like scary, which I find helpful whenever I write. So this is just knowledge that I've collected over the years that I think can start to help write a scary story, but it's definitely not everything. And the more that you all know, the more I know. So please let me know. Feel free to contact me. Leave comments. Go to www.arc-storm.com. Click on the contact button. But as always, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching, and continue to enjoy.